Good morning. I would like to call to order this public roundtable of the Committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety. I am Councilmember Brooke Pinto, representing Ward 2 and Chairwoman of the committee. The time is now 11:17 a.m. on Thursday, June 27th, 2024, and we are conducting this public roundtable virtually over Zoom and streaming on the DC Council's website and YouTube and X at CM Brooke Pinto. On the agenda for today, we have confirmation resolutions for 5 nominees to the Science Advisory Board, otherwise colloquially known as the SAB or SAB. The Science Advisory Board was created in 2011 to provide peer review of the Department of Forensic Sciences practices and to ensure that the department is following industry protocols and best practices and incorporating new technologies. The board consists of 9 voting members appointed by the mayor. 5 of the members are required to be scientists with experience in scientific research and methodology who have published in peer-reviewed scientific journals and who are not currently employed by DFS or by a law enforcement laboratory or agency. The other 4 members are required to be forensic scientists not employed by the Department of Forensic Sciences or by the lab or agency that provides forensic science services to the district. The Department of Forensic Sciences is currently undergoing a crucial period as it works hard to obtain reaccreditation for its remaining unaccredited divisions and generally rebuild after earlier struggles. A strong, experienced, and expert science advisory board is a vital aspect of DFS's growth, and I look forward to hearing from the nominees today about how this important body expects to help in our efforts moving forward with DFS. In the words of the committee report from the original creation of the SAB was created to strike a balance between focusing on science and best practices without needing to be involved in the day-to-day operations of the board. I look forward to hearing the nominees' thoughts today on the relationship between the SAB and DFS, what they believe can lead to the most effective outcomes and the most effective partnership. PR 25-796 nominates Ms. Claudine Pereira as a forensic scientist member to the Science Advisory Board for a term to end April 18th, 2026. Ms. Pereira currently serves as the director of the Broward County Sheriff's Office Crime Lab in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Prior to being promoted to lab director in 2014, Ms. Pereira served as a print examiner for 15 years. She also serves as a technical assessor for the ANSI National Accreditation Board, and she earned her Bachelor of Science in Biology from Loyola University, Maryland, and her Master of Science from the Virginia Commonwealth University. PR 25-797 nominates Ms. Laura Sudkamp as a scientist member with experience in scientific research and methodology to the Science Advisory Board for a term to end April 18th, 2025. Before retirement, Ms. Sudkamp served as director of the Kentucky State Police Forensic Laboratories. Prior to serving as director, Ms. Sudkamp worked as a drug chemist and in various managerial and supervisory roles for the Kentucky State Police Forensic Laboratories. She's a former president of the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors. Ms. Sudkamp earned her bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Kentucky. PR 25-798 nominates Nicole Roehm as a forensic scientist member to the Science Advisory Board for a term to end April 18th, 2026. Ms. Roehm currently serves as the administrator for the Division of Forensic Science at the Wisconsin Department of Justice. She previously worked as a DNA analyst at the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory, and also serves as a technical assessor for the ANSI National Accreditation Board. Ms. Roehm earned her Bachelor of Science in Biology from the University of Wisconsin and her Master of Science in Forensic DNA and Serology from the University of Florida. PR 25-799 nominates Roger Kahn as a scientist member with expertise in scientific research and methodology to the Science Advisory Board for a term to end April 18th, 2026. Mr. Kahn is a former Chief Science Officer in Harris County, Texas. He served as Crime Laboratory Director at Harris County Institute for Forensic Sciences. Mr. Kahn earned his Bachelor of Arts in Biology from the University of California at Santa Barbara and his Doctor of Philosophy in Human Genetics from Yale University. And last, PR 25-836 nominates Dr. Jeri D. Ropero-Miller as a forensic scientist member to the Science Advisory Board for a term to end November 26, 2027. Dr. Ropero-Miller is a principal scientist in the justice practice area of RTI International. She's also a certified fellow in the American Board of Forensic Toxicology and has served as a laboratory inspector for the National Laboratory Certification Program. Dr. Ropero-Miller earned her Bachelor of Arts in Chemistry from Wesleyan College and her doctorate in Clinical Chemistry and Forensic Toxicology from the University of Florida College of Medicine. I'll note that this roundtable was originally scheduled to include PR 25-835, the nomination of Lance Allen to the Science Advisory Board, but per his own request, this resolution will be withdrawn, and so we will not be hearing testimony on it at this time, and we'll stick to these 5 nominees. I'm looking forward to hearing today from each nominee about their relevant experience and their vision for the SAB's future. Today, we have no public witnesses, so I'm going to invite all of our nominees to join in on the Zoom. If you haven't already, please make sure to accept your invitation to join as a panelist. And if I can ask you all to turn your camera on. Welcome. It is the tradition of this committee to swear in all public witnesses who appear before it. So if I can ask you to take yourself off mute and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide before the Council of the District of Columbia and this committee is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes, I do.
Thank you all very much. I'd now like to invite each of you to make any opening statement that you may have. We'll begin with Claudine Carter Pereira. And excuse me, am I pronouncing your name improperly? What's the best pronunciation?
It's okay. Nobody pronounces it correctly. It's quite okay. It's Pereira, but it's fine. No worries.
Pereira.
Pereira. Pereira. Think of potato, Pereira. So that's the only way I can get people to, but it's okay.
Fantastic. Ms. Pereira, thank you. Please go ahead with any opening statement you may have.
All right. Thank you so much. Good morning, Chairperson Pinto and the members of the committee. I am Claudine Carter Pereira, and it is a pleasure to be considered to serve on the Science Advisory Board. I am grateful to Mayor Muriel Bowser for nominating me and honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of the district. I was born and raised in the Bahamas with aspirations of becoming a prima ballerina, so little did I know that my path would lead me to where I am today. I'm fortunate to have had an almost 30-year career in forensic science while still maintaining my passion for dance as a performing and teaching artist and earning the nickname of forensic ballerina, which is probably easier to say than Pereira. I received my Bachelor's of Science degree in biology from Loyola University in Maryland and went on to receive my Master's of Science degree in forensic science from Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. Just prior to graduation, after completing a summer internship, I interviewed and was hired by the Baltimore City Police Department as a crime scene technician. I remained in Baltimore for 2.5 years and made the decision to move to South Florida for a position as a latent print examiner with the Broward Sheriff's Office Crime Lab, where I've been employed for the last 25 years. I was a latent print unit manager for 10 years, and in 2014, I was promoted to my current position of Crime Lab Director. I am confident that my professional and personal background demonstrates my pursuit of excellence and passion for this field. I maintain my involvement in many professional organizations, committees, and task groups, supporting the development and implementation of best practices. Throughout my time with the Broward Sheriff's Office, I have attended numerous training workshops and conferences, notably As it relates to this board, I've completed the ISO IEC 17025 and ISO IEC 17020 assessor courses, and I am a certified technical assessor in the Friction Ridge discipline for both these international accreditation standards. And for more than 15 years, I've conducted assessment activities, both nationally and internationally, as a technical assessor and as a site leader, respectively. Additionally, I am a life member of both the International Association for Identification, known as the IAI, and the Florida division of the IAI as well, where I serve on various committees there. In 2020, I was invited to participate in the Organization for Scientific Area Committees for Forensic Science, also known as OSAC, and I am on the Friction Ridge Subcommittee. I served a 3-year term as a member and currently am an affiliate. In early 2022, I was invited to serve on the advisory board for my alma mater, Loyola University in Maryland, for the College of Arts and Sciences. Later that year, I was also invited to serve on an advisory board with Florida International University Professional Science Master's Degree Program. Most recently, I was selected to fill a board vacancy for a year and was subsequently elected to serve a 4-year term on the board of directors for the American Society of Crime Lab Directors, also known as ASCLD. I believe that I can move this board forward and provide valuable insights gained over the span of my almost 30-year career, not only in the Friction Ridge discipline, but on my 2 decades of leadership and experience as a unit manager and most recently Crime Lab Director. I am aware that expanding the scope of accreditation has been mentioned as a primary focus, specifically in the Friction Ridge discipline. One of my goals would be to work with the Department of Forensic Science in an advisory capacity to have this discipline added to the scope of accreditation or reaccreditation. I also would like to encourage the Department of Forensic Services to join the more than 155 forensic service providers that have implemented or partially implemented standards from the OSAC registry. I realize that this would be an entirely new board, and it is my hope that the Science Advisory Board and the Department of Forensic Sciences will operate as a partnership with a common goal of ensuring that best practices are being followed and implemented, while still remaining fiscally responsible and serving the citizens of the district. I want to thank you, Chairman Pinto, for the opportunity to testify before this committee today, and I would be happy to respond to any questions from you or any members of the committee. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next, we will hear from Laura Sudkamp. And Ms. Sudkamp, you're still on mute.
One of those mornings. Sorry about that. So good morning, Chairperson Pinto and members of the committee. I am Laura Sudkamp, and it is my pleasure to receive your consideration for my nomination to serve on the District Science Advisory Board. I am grateful to Mayor Bowser for nominating me and honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of the district. I bring 35 years of forensic science experience from my tenure with the Kentucky State Police Forensic Laboratories. My career began as a drug chemist, where I dedicated 10 years to the meticulous analysis and identification of controlled substances. I then transitioned into management, where I spent the next 25 years, culminating in my role as the director of a 6-laboratory system spread across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. In my capacity as director, I've had the privilege of overseeing diverse forensic disciplines and ensuring the delivery of high-quality, scientifically sound forensic services. My responsibilities extended beyond the laboratory to include collaboration with the legislature on technical bills and budget proposals, and advocating for the resources and policies necessary to advance forensic science. I am an active member of the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors, also known as ASCLD, where I served 2 terms on their board of directors and was honored to be the president in 2021. My involvement in ASCLD has provided me with invaluable insights into the challenges and advancement in forensic science nationwide. Additionally, I have served on various boards and committees in conjunction with my role with the Kentucky State Police, including a Sexual Assault Response Advisory Committee, Executive Highway Safety Committee, and a Violent Death Reporting System Board. These roles have equipped me with a broad perspective on public safety and forensic science's critical role in supporting justice and community safety. My extensive experience in forensic science management, legislative collaboration, and board leadership uniquely positions me to contribute effectively to the Washington, D.C. Science Advisory Board. I understand the intricate balance between scientific integrity, operational efficiency, and policy development. As a member of the Science Advisory Board, I would bring a comprehensive understanding of the forensic science lab's landscape, from hands-on laboratory work to high-level administrative and strategic planning. My background in working with state legislators on technical bills and the budgetary matters would be invaluable in advising on policies and initiatives that impact the scientific community in Washington, D.C. Furthermore, my experience with ASCLD and the various public safety boards demonstrates my ability to work collaboratively with diverse stakeholders, fostering partnerships that enhance forensic science services and public trust. Looking ahead, I envision a future where the Washington, D.C. Science Advisory Board and the Department of Forensic Sciences work in seamless collaboration to build a respected and trusted forensic science system. Together, we can establish a framework that promotes scientific excellence, operational transparency, and criminal justice community engagement. By leveraging my experience in forensic science and management, DFS can develop and implement best practices that ensure the highest standards of accuracy and reliability in forensics analysis. This collaborative approach will enhance the credibility of the laboratory, support law enforcement efforts, and strengthen the public confidence in the justice system. We can also focus on continuous professional development for the forensic scientists, ensuring they have access to the latest developments in technology and methodology. This commitment to ongoing education and innovation will position DFS as a leader in the field, setting benchmarks for excellence that others will aspire to follow. In conclusion, I am excited about the possibility of contributing to the Science Advisory Board and working with the members of the board and DFS to create a forensic laboratory that is not only a pillar of scientific integrity, but also a trusted partner in the pursuit of justice and public safety. Thank you for considering my application. Thank you, Chairperson Pinto, for the opportunity to testify before this committee, and I would be happy to respond to questions from you and the members of the committee.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Sudkamp. Next, we will turn to Nicole Roehm.
Good morning, Chairperson Pinto and members of the committee. I'm Nicole Roehm, and it is my pleasure to receive your consideration for my nomination to serve on the Science Advisory Board for the DC Department of Forensic Sciences. I am grateful to Mayor Bowser for nominating me and honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of the district. In May 2006, I received a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse in biology with a biomedical science concentration. In May of 2012, I received my master's degree in pharmacy with a forensic DNA and serology certificate. Since June of 2007, I have worked for the Wisconsin Department of Justice, and in January of 2024, I co-founded my own business, Forward Resolutions, which assists organizations in evaluating their current state and offers recommendations to help them transform to achieve their ideal state. I value the importance of good leadership in government. In October of 2022, I received an honorable mention for the State of Wisconsin Virginia Hart Special Recognition Award, which recognizes unsung heroines in state service. The award recognizes women who share the following qualities: esteem from peers, acceptance of responsibility beyond the limits of one's job description, sustained extraordinary achievement of assigned tasks, performance recognition from clients, community service, self-improvement, and overcoming hardships to performance. For the past 17 years, I've worked for the publicly funded Division of Forensic Sciences at the Wisconsin Department of Justice, working at all levels of the organization. This experience puts me in a unique position to understand the intricacies of running a crime laboratory. It gives me the perspective and knowledge to know what can be done at all levels and also what cannot be done. I also understand the nuances of ISO 17025 accreditation, as I myself am a technical assessor for the ANSI National Accreditation Board, ANAB. I am passionate about the field of forensic science and would be honored to use my knowledge, skills, and abilities to assist the DC DFS in their mission. If I were to be appointed to the DFS Science Advisory Board, I would strive to build collaborative and healthy working relationships. Communication and healthy conflict would be essential to building the trust needed to foster those healthy working relationships. If confirmed as a member of the DC DFS Science Advisory Board, it's my vision to listen and assist the DFS leadership on meeting their mission and vision. I would offer feedback and perspective of a forensic science leadership practitioner to help guide them and professionally challenge them on their journey. It is my goal to help the DFS rebuild trust, and an area of focus for me would be championing their work and improving working relationships with their stakeholders and offering the transparency needed to be a successful forensic science service provider. Thank you, Chairperson Pinto, for the opportunity to testify before this committee. I would be happy to respond to questions from you and the members of the committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roehm.
Yes, Roehm,
okay.
Roehm paper. Yep.
Wonderful. Appreciate everyone's help with that. We will now turn to Roger Kahn.
Good morning, Chairperson Pinto and members of the committee. I am Dr. Roger Kahn. It's my pleasure to be considered to serve on the Science Advisory Board of the Department of Forensic Sciences. I'm grateful to Mayor Muriel Bowser for nominating me and honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of the district. I received a PhD in human genetics from Yale University in 1983 and conducted postdoctoral research at Yale for several years before joining the Miami-Dade Police Department Crime Lab in 1988 to establish one of the first forensic DNA labs in the nation. In 1996, I joined the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Identification and led the establishment of their forensic DNA laboratories and was named director of their 3-lab crime laboratory system. In that role, I led the first accreditation of all forensic lab services. And in 2005, I joined the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences, where I led the quadrupling of staff of the DNA lab from 11 to more than 40 analysts. And in 2012, I became their crime laboratory director, and retired from that role in 2021. I'm a fellow of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. I'm certified in molecular biology by the American Board of Criminalistics. I'm a past president of the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors, a former member of the editorial board of the Journal of Forensic Sciences, and a former and founding member of the FBI's Scientific Working Group on DNA Analysis Methods. I'm a qualified auditor of the FBI Director's Quality Assurance Standards for Forensic DNA Testing Labs and a qualified ANSI ANAB Laboratory Accreditation Assessor. Lastly, I previously served on the North Carolina Forensic Science Advisory Board for the North Carolina State Crime Lab. I have a proven record of building, strengthening, and maintaining all aspects of crime laboratory operations, and I look forward to assisting DFS in its rebuilding process. My academic and professional achievements include a strong research and publication record that includes grant-funded research conducted at Harris County. This experience gives me credibility and confidence to bring stability as well as innovation to the DC Department of Forensic Sciences. The goal is to ensure the laboratory continues to develop a culture of excellence and professionalism. For the board to effectively advise the Department of Forensic Sciences, there must be a high level of trust between the board and the department. Trust will take time to establish, but it is essential. I'm confident that I can develop, foster, and sustain key relationships in advance of tackling challenging situations. The Science Advisory Board is advisory, not a parallel executive entity. Nonetheless, the board's responsibilities are substantial. For example, the DC code that enumerates the board functions begins by stating, and I quote, "The board shall review all reports of allegations of professional negligence, misconduct, or misidentification, or other testing errors that occurred in the provision of forensic science services," end quote. These are among the most difficult problems a laboratory can face, and laboratory leaders must respond appropriately and in a timely manner. there's likely to be a variety of potential approaches. In my view, an effective science advisory board can be a source of both concurrent and alternative viewpoints. Ultimately, DFS management must respond while the board's responsibility ends at review. But the board can strengthen DFS management's ability to respond by providing expert advice and assistance. The Department of Forensic Sciences is being rebuilt after a loss of accreditation. This is an opportune time to develop and strengthen a culture of quality and innovation. Innovation requires resources. Before making specific recommendations, I need to learn more about the operations of the department, their most important goals and challenges, and the resources available to them. Thank you, Chairperson Pinto, for this opportunity to testify before the committee. I'd be happy to respond to questions from you and the members of the committee.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Kahn. And next and last, we will turn to Dr. Jeri D. Ropero-Miller.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson Pinto and members of the committee. I am Dr. Jeri Ropero-Miller, and it is my pleasure to be considered to serve on the Science Advisory Board. I am grateful to Mayor Muriel Bowser for nominating me and honored to have this opportunity to serve the residents of the district. I currently serve as the principal scientist in the justice practice area of RTI International. With years of experience in forensic toxicology and justice research, my work has primarily focused on postmortem drug studies, emerging drugs, hair drug studies, drug surveillance and intelligence, program evaluation, and technology evaluation and adoption. At RTI International, I have had the privilege of leading and supporting significant projects such as the National Institute of Justice's Forensic Technology Center of Excellence, its Criminal Justice Technology Testing and Evaluation Center, and the Bureau of Justice Statistics funded 2022 Census for Medical Examiner and Coroner's Offices, and the 2019 Census for Publicly Funded Forensic Crime Laboratories. In addition to my role at RTI International, I am a certified fellow within the American Board of Forensic Toxicology, or ABFT, and serve on the Forensic Science Standards Board of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, their Organization of Scientific Area Committees, or OSAC, and I am the treasurer for the Society of Forensic Toxicologists. I was honored to serve as the 2021-2022 president of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences and was the recipient of its 2022 Roller in Harger Award of Career Excellence in Forensic Toxicology. My work has been extensively published, and I am recognized nationally and internationally for my contributions to forensic laboratory and justice research. Serving on the DC Science Advisory Board will allow me to serve in a role that uses my professional skills and experience to provide input to help ensure excellence at the DC Department of Forensic Sciences and support decision-making to maintain public safety and justice within the district. A lifelong goal of mine is to engage in efforts in forensic sciences to advance science by increasing its integrity, mitigating bias and errors, pursuing standards and best practices, and mentoring and educating. Quality, laboratory excellence, and continuous improvement of the forensic science profession are all of particular interest to me. These are objectives within my research, which include technology adoption, technology evaluation, method development and validation, and online professional training. Additionally, my active participation in professional leadership through consensus-based standards, laboratory inspection, professional boards, national working groups and commissions, and professional outreach and dissemination further substantiates my commitment. These topics are reflected in the subcommittees, task groups, and special groups I have chosen to invest my time in, helping my professional community improve their science, work efforts, and environmental culture. As a member of the Science Advisory Board, I believe I could provide unbiased, informed, and strategic decisions to advise the director, mayor, and council on matters relating to the scientific basis, operations, and forensic sciences at the Department of Forensic Sciences. Looking ahead, my vision for the Science Advisory Board is to create a robust platform for scientific discourse and innovation that addresses both current and future challenges facing the district, particularly in the realm of forensic science. One of my primary objectives is to ensure that all reports of allegations of professional negligence, misconduct, or testing errors are thoroughly reviewed and addressed, maintaining the highest standards of forensic science practice. Furthermore, I will aim to enhance the board's engagement with the community by organizing public forums and workshops that demystify forensic science concepts and their real-world application. This will help bridge the gap between scientific research and public understanding, which will foster a community that values and supports scientific endeavors. I believe the existing collaborative efforts with local institutions have laid a strong foundation. I intend to build on this momentum by introducing more interdisciplinary projects that leverage the diverse expertise within our community. In conclusion, I am enthusiastic about the opportunity to serve on the Science Advisory Board. I believe serving on this advisory board offers me an excellent opportunity to provide my knowledge and insights while also acquiring practical experience in effective governmental and board functioning and gaining a greater understanding of this unique decision-making process. I will voice concerns and suggestions based on my professional experience and evidence-based knowledge as a researcher and past forensic science practitioner. Thank you once again for considering my nomination. I look forward to the possibility of contributing to the community in this meaningful way. Thank you, Chairperson Pinto, for the opportunity to testify before the committee. I would be happy to respond to questions from you and the members of the committee.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Ropero-Miller, and thank you to all of you for sharing your experience and your perspective on SAB. Really appreciate your willingness to serve in this really important function. I do have a couple of questions for you all, and a few of you, in addition to the substantive experience that you have, also have experience in management and administration of a forensic lab. And so I'm curious on what your thoughts are on what is most crucial in effectively managing a forensic lab, especially in this unique moment where we are on the path to regaining full accreditation. And in no particular order, if folks have thoughts.
I'll jump in with both feet. So from my perspective, you've really got to learn your lab. You have to figure out what are their true capabilities, where are their limits, what can they do, what can't they do. Sometimes there's a kind of a fuzzy line sometime, and you really have to figure out where those lines reside. Then you have to find out, do they have the proper equipment, the proper resources, the proper staff to complete what they're being asked to do. And you've got to really look at their methodologies, their protocols, their manuals, make sure that their training is sufficient. You've got to take just a real good hard look at everything that they're doing. Once you get comfortable, because like we're all coming from the same background with doing our own assessments with our accrediting body and preparing for that and making sure that you've got everything. So it would be very similar to that, and getting, learning the people and let them learn who you are and building a trust that's there. I'll be quiet now.
Thank you.
I think another thing to consider is that the staff has buy-in as far as having having quality practices just be a natural course of action. I know our laboratory, when we had to first embark upon the accreditation journey, there was a lot of like, I don't want to be accredited, it's too much work, it's all this other stuff. But now that we've been in it for years, it's hard to imagine how we functioned prior to accreditation. So I think once you get to the point that your staff understands how important it is and how it actually benefits your organization and the community as a whole, I think that's one of the most important things. And I would also echo what Laura said as far as ensuring that you are aware of what resources you have and what people's strengths and weaknesses are. There's, everybody can't do everything. So you have to make sure that you put the people in place that can do the things that need to be done, and then you work from there. So I think that's kind of my idea as far as how things should run from a manager.
I would add here, everything that Claudine and Laura have stated, I agree with completely. It comes down to the people and making sure you understand the people that you're serving as the leader. They are the ones that make or break whether or not you actually have quality practices in place. Like, it's our job to put a solid framework, make sure the resources are there. But if they don't wholeheartedly, intrinsically believe this, you're going to have a concern or an issue down the road. And I think part of that too is our modeling of behaviors and showing how we value the quality system as leaders and how we support the practices that they're doing. The job that we do is a stressful one. And there's a lot of demands placed upon crime laboratory analysts to get things done faster, things of that nature. And when we show that we support them to take the time to institute a quality system, and that maybe we have to engage with stakeholders to have courageous conversations about why these things are so vitally important, and why, the question we get a lot is, why does it take so long, right, to get things done? And we have to say, because there are safeguards in place, that we don't get the answers wrong, and that we're putting out quality, trustworthy results that then can withstand the critique in court. So it really does come into a strong empowerment of the staff and making sure they know that we as leaders have their backs and we're getting them the resources that they need. And we do know where those limitations lie, and we aren't expecting of them something that's unreasonable in the first place.
I'll take it next. One of the things I think is important is continuous learning. And that requires you to know the education and training extent of the staff that you've got. As new directors of the current crime lab, although they've gotten 2 difficult sections reaccredited, it's important to continuously verify the understanding level of the people that are there. For example, mock trials can be held at interval, not just once at qualification. It's important to test people and let them know that part of the laboratory is not just technical work, but continuous learning. Expect from them to know, be able to make presentations on new technologies themselves, get them invested in their careers as professionals rather than technicians. Then they'll contribute by insistence to the quality culture, because they'll want their laboratory and their own participation in it to be stellar.
And I guess I'll add a few things. That these are all great comments, so I'm just going to talk to the ones that maybe add to or see it in just a slightly different way. I definitely think staff involvement and buy-in is key, and that you can't really do a program of quality assurance that comes from the top down. You really have to engage the staff from beginning to help with the decision-making process and what's going to be practical. And, they know from the beginning what the expectations are, and you have a team environment of how to work to get there. Training is very important to be continuous. It's not a once and done thing, and it's not internal or external. It really needs to be both, and it needs to happen as soon as the training is needing. It's not being put off so that, you can only address it once a year or not even once a year. Continuous improvement, I think, really needs to be proactive. It shouldn't be only about auditing and dealing with the issues, that you really need to have something in place that's supported by the community, that helps the laboratory and the laboratory itself to strive for continuous improvement and quality assurance, because it takes a lot of efforts. So you have to allow the time away from the casework to address quality assurance, because it's not a do it after the casework is done. It really is do it to make sure that the casework is done correctly. So they're hand in hand kind of things. And then again, the last thing is just allowing some type of, I would call it research group or a person who can really take time to evaluate new technologies and new practices, best practices or even the standards that the laboratory needs to bring in to address that continuous improvement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all very much. That's helpful, and it's actually reinforcing how much consistency there is about the people on the follow-up, which I hope continues to be a lesson learned of previous mistakes of DFS as we move forward in a positive direction. Given that history, I think the SAB is in a unique position right now to be advisory and to be an effective partner with DFS. And I'm curious folks' view on how you see the role of the SAB, and what you would think would be most effective for your tenure in redeveloping that relationship.
Let me jump in first. Sorry for doing that, but it's more or less up to the executive what the role of the SAB is. As a prior member of a board in North Carolina, the board all wanted a larger role, and the executive pushed back on it. Very frustrating. It felt like we weren't fulfilling our mission or the desires of the people that were on it. I think because of the current rebuilding process and the openness I'm experiencing, even just through this nomination process, DC is likely to have a better board. And if that's the case, then it can be a truly collaborative effort where the ideas and the feedback that the board has are embraced. And I look forward to doing that. That would be good for the community, good for the lab, good for the board members, good for the executive.
Any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So my perspective, I have the ability in my current role in Wisconsin to chair an advisory board from the crime lab leadership perspective. So I'm very interested in contributing on the other side of the table, if you will, and because I know what has benefited me in my administrator role, but it's very much advisory in nature. There are circumstances and details and situations that a crime lab leader has going on in the environment they're working in, that they need that advisory board to offer feedback, consideration, help them vet their ideas, show limitations, see different perspectives, and making sure that we're not having a narrow focus. But ultimately, that final decision does have to rest with the leadership of that crime laboratory because of the factors that they have to consider, holistically, that they might not even be able to get into. What I have found, though, is you have to reciprocate and give transparency back. If you make decisions that maybe aren't in complete alignment with the advisory board, you owe them the respect to give them that full answer back as to why maybe something was pursued a little differently than discussed. Again, this is all part of that building relationships and trust, right? And again, explaining where that's coming from. So to me, I think to be most effective, there has to be the understanding and clear definition of roles and responsibilities of the advisory board from an onset, and people understand what it is we are here to do and serve, and that we are advising advisory in nature. We're to bring all of our different perspectives and experiences forward to DFS leadership to consider all these different areas, but ultimately respect the fact of their roles as the decision-making person or entity, and then hope that we have that dialogue later about the transparency about why the final decision maybe was made a certain way. Because again, I respect that there are circumstances that we have to consider, but we don't want it to feel like things are being hidden. Right? It needs to be open, and that's a crime lab perspective across the board. Everything needs to be transparent. Everything needs to be open, and there can't be this feeling like we're trying to fight one another, because we aren't there to be adversaries. We're supposed to be there to be collaborative. And I agree with what Dr. Kahn said. I think that so far how this has been structured has been a very positive experience to showcase that is the goals that the district is looking to achieve through the SAP.
Great. Thank you very much. It's great to hear. Anything else to add on this?
I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to also say the collaborative approach and making it a partnership, and also understanding that we are advisory in nature, and then ultimately the decision is not up to us, but we are there to advise. And similar to other boards that I've been on in an advisory capacity, it is, they don't always do what the advisory board thinks they should do, and that's okay. And as long as we can have discussions about it, and that way we're in communication and we're transparent as to what's going on, but it doesn't mean it's my way or the highway. There are many ways to look at things. And so sometimes we may not have all the information or understand different dynamics that are going on within the crime lab. So I think ultimately they have to make the decisions, but at least if they're taking them under advisement, I feel like they can make better decisions.
And I will add just quickly that, you got a lot of people in the criminal justice community. You got law enforcement that want certain things. You've got prosecutors that need certain things. Defense wants certain things. Legislatures, that are your government policymakers, they have certain things they want, and there's limited funding. So you have to sit down and you have to evaluate what's the true need and how can we make this work within the world that we have. And that interaction between all the different groups is truly needed. One, for input on ideas on how to solve a problem. Sometimes that outside perspective is very interesting, but also just to, that decision is jointly made on this is the direction that we're going and why, because of any limitation that might be there, or, hey, we found a pool of money and here you go. So that's all I would add to that. Everyone else was great.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. So Ms. Pereira, I want to turn to you, and something that you mentioned in your testimony was the friction in your work, of your work in friction ridge discipline. Can you describe what that means to a layperson and why it's important that DFS expand its scope of accreditation to include this type of discipline?
So friction ridge discipline is basically latent fingerprints or latent impressions. And I know that area is something that they are working towards getting accredited or reaccredited. And I've working in an agency as I have for many years. I'm a certified latent print examiner. I've been in the field for a long time. I still maintain my certification. I still do a proficiency test every year. I'm still involved in the discipline. And I think one of the things that's important is that there are many ways of approaching accreditation. So I think a lot of times people who've been in the field a very long time don't understand some of the parts of the accreditation process. And so I know me personally, we had to be very creative and innovative in figuring out how to meet the accreditation standards and still be able to get the casework out, understanding the constraints of not having the staffing in place to, we were understaffed. There was a lot of things going on, and we still have to meet the accreditation standards. And so one of the things that I think for me personally, because I've had those experiences with backlogs and being short-staffed and still having to meet accreditation standards, is not an excuse that just because there's a bunch of cases coming in, that quality goes out the window. So I have to make sure that I'm still able to maintain caseloads and that type of stuff. So I know that's an issue a lot of times in the friction ridge discipline. And when I do assessments, I'm there obviously to assess a laboratory, but I oftentimes have people call me after the assessment's over And they're, they've asked me like, well, have you come across this problem before? How have you addressed it? Is there something you could suggest we're doing? Or is there another way to look at this that we could still meet the standards? And you know what I mean? So I feel like I speak to my discipline because that's what I'm most familiar with, but I do feel there's a lot of wiggle room for how you can still meet accreditation and still have quality work and still be able to get everything done in the scope of what has to be completed. So that's kind of been my experience. And I think that I've dealt with everything from losing 50% of my staff and having nobody to work cases and 10,000 cases coming in and 4 people to work them. And I had to figure it out, so we had to still meet the accreditation standards and get casework out. And we had to sit and think and find new ways to do things. So I feel that because I've been in that seat before, I feel that I can provide some insights as to how to make things work. And there may be ways that people didn't think about before that, is something that might be helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. I was going to ask you about that experience, so that's helpful for you to have articulated. So thank you very much. Ms. Sudkamp, I want to make sure I clarify one thing. You have retired currently from serving as director of the Kentucky State Police Forensic Lab, right?
Correct.
Okay, and when was that retirement?
December 31st, 2023. I have started my own LLC, which is a forensic consulting position, and then I have actually returned back to state government work at the auditor's office, non-forensic related.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mhm.
And have you ever published anything in peer-reviewed scientific journals?
In scientific journals, the only thing I've really done was more of a management. We worked on a book about forensic laboratories and management. Mine has been mostly, mine was about stressors, the stress of working in the laboratory and the management perspective. Most of what I have ever written has come from management type things, forensic, the sexual assault kits. I have not done any scientific papers, no. I do have one of the groups. When I moved up from the drug chemist section, I went into a research group at the laboratory where we were working on whether or not you could source marijuana, where was it grown, anywhere in the country. And through that, working with the DNA group, we actually got a patent established, but that was me managing and working us toward us in that direction, but I did not do that.
Okay, thank you. And it's my understanding that you've received numerous commendations for your work on programs preventing sexual assault and domestic violence in particular. How will your experience working on these important issues inform your service on the SAB? And what do you think is the most important thing for a forensic science agency to do to combat sexual assault and domestic violence?
I have a very good understanding of what the public perception is of, what it takes to work on a sexual assault kit. Why does it take so long? What's the holdup? What does it involve? I understand law enforcement and how they approach these cases. It's not always victim-centered. I've learned, the legislature, they want to suddenly enact that you have to do something and we're not capable of doing it. I really feel that laboratories need to take into consideration all of that we may have to rearrange what we're doing currently in order to create a better channel. Now, I don't want to say that this sexual assault case trumps that homicide case. They're both very critical, but you've got to learn, you've got to work a balance out with that because the public is looking at you. And when there's a whole bunch of sexual assault kits that come in, it's not the lab's fault that the police department held them. It's not, but we are the ones that look like we're slow or we're not getting them out. And you have to manage that media. You have to manage the expectations. If you're going to outsource, that's not a cure-all. There have been all kinds of issues with that. So it's just something where it's a constantly juggling and very public-facing issue across the country on getting sexual assault kits into the lab, tested, and then getting those hits out to law enforcement.
Thank you, and I appreciate you mentioning the balance because certainly these important issues shouldn't run in conflict with one another, but it is vitally important to me and to the district that we take very seriously our sexual assault cases.
Yes.
And we know how these cases can permeate into other violence, and future homicides in many circumstances. So, thank you for your work on that important issue. Ms. Roehm, earlier in your career, you led the DNA analysis unit. How will that experience inform your work on the SAB?
Yes, I started as a DNA analyst, was fully trained and proficient and competent in that field. Then I was a supervisor of the DNA analysis unit for quite a few years. My background's in DNA. I have a passion for that work. Like Laura, have been involved on state level, what we call the Attorney General Sexual Assault Response Team, or the AG SART, and helped recently work with legislators in the state of Wisconsin to enact legislation that goes into effect next week, Monday, as it relates to the testing of timeline for certain kits in the possession of the state of Wisconsin law enforcement entities. So I've been passionate about it. I've been working for the majority of my career on the sexual assault piece, but specifically in DNA. The other piece that I'm passionate about at the moment is the expansion of the use of forensic investigative genetic genealogy. And so in Wisconsin, we've been working on a collaborative effort between our forensic scientists and our criminal agents or investigative agents on how to better utilize that expansive new technology in Wisconsin to solve cold cases and stuff. So my work in DNA, it never ends. It always has a special place in my heart. I've learned over the years to expand my knowledge base in the other forensic disciplines that I serve as the administrator of, but there's certain elements going on in DNA that are just really exciting right now, like the FIG work and the better handling of sexual assault kits and DNA evidence as a whole. So that's kind of my perspective of the work I've done in Wisconsin that's DNA related.
Thank you very much, and that's great news about that new law in Wisconsin.
Yes.
To
Yes.
following that along. So as a technical assessor for ANAB, what do you see as the most important thing DFS should do to ensure it obtains its reaccreditation? And I want to come to you next too, Ms. Theta, about your experience as an assessor and how you think that we could kind of use that insight moving forward.
Well, as far as preparing for the assessment, I think it's important to look at I spent a lot of time talking to other laboratories that I know are accredited. So there may be something where I'm struggling or have struggled with how can we make sure we're meeting the accreditation standards? What are your ideas as to how we can meet them? So I think talking to other labs is kind of integral in my opinion. In addition to that, when you're looking at the standards, there's room for interpretation. And so meeting the standard can mean a lot of different things. So one agency might be doing it one way, another agency might be doing it another. They're all meeting the standard. It just kind of depends on how you look at it. And it's going to be based on what you're capable of doing. I know, for an example, like when we were 50% staffed and we were going coming into an assessment situation, and we had to change our protocols and change everything we were doing in order to meet the demands of casework coming in, still meet the accreditation requirements. And actually I called, it was ASCLD Lab at the time, but I called them to find out if this is the scenario, this is what I'm thinking of doing, can I meet accreditation and do this? And then I talked it through with somebody. So I mean that I found, at least in the past, that someone was willing to talk to me so that I could at least make sure that what I'm doing is not going to, that how I can meet the standard and what the intent of the standard is. Because sometimes we read the standard and have our own interpretation, and that's not the intention. So I think it's important to, I say, talk to other laboratories, you have experience. I mean, you have all of us on the advisory board, even as an example, we all have experience as doing assessments. So that kind of thing I think is important. You can get a different perspective. So preparation is key, and having those things in place before the assessment activity is happening. So make sure that you've looked at a gap analysis to figure out where you might have things that are missing. That's super, I mean, beyond important. So you want to make sure that that's something that you're doing from the very beginning, not waiting until, oh, we have an assessment in 3 months and we haven't figured out what we need to do. So I think that's something you need to start looking at right away and find the gaps and figure out how you can meet them. And if there's something you're not sure what to do, then ask somebody. I'm sure there's, that's what I think everybody in the forensic community, for the most part, is willing to assist and help. Because I've called many a lab director, like, hey, are you dealing with this issue? How did your lab deal with it? So I think that's very important to maintain those relationships and those partnerships with other laboratories too.
Thank you very much for that. Ms. Roehm, do you have anything else to add about seeking reaccreditation from your experience that would be most important in your advice to DFS?
It kind of dovetails off of what Claudine just was stating, but she's absolutely right about how we interpret things. And I know personally from our own experience, making sure you're not overly prescriptive in policies as it relates to what's going on in the laboratory. And because that can create more unnecessary work, if you will, because you're writing a policy too tight and it can create more non-conformances than it's not meeting, or it's going beyond meeting what the actual intent of the standard is. And I think that's really important. Having a quality team that can dedicate time to assisting with all of that. I know that's tough because we're all understaffed, but if you can get to a point where you have set folks beyond just like your quality assurance director that can assist with ensuring that we're taking all these precautions as we go along to make sure our policies are sound, that they're not overly prescriptive, that we're meeting, the intent of the standards, making sure the training programs are appropriate from people from the onset. Because like we talked about earlier, quality starts at every level of the organization and it starts early on, and it has to just be something that it's understood. This is the way we handle our business. Like, this is the way we behave. And so I think that's really important, but accreditation standards change, right? And they evolve, and even the perspective of the crediting body over the recent few years has changed to be more of a risk-based thinking perspective, which has changed a lot in how we now approach even being accredited. And I think engaging with other labs, don't be an island. There are other people going through the exact same things we are. Reach out to one another, reach out to the accrediting body. They want to help you grow and understand what's going on. I think it's just vitally important. So
thank you very much for that. It's great advice from both of you. So Dr. Kahn, I want to turn to you, and you have really significant experience in both the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation, as well as the Harris County Institute of Forensic Science in Texas. What have you learned in working in different states that you think we in DC can benefit from your expertise in coming to the staff?
Both of those laboratories were building. In Ohio, when I got there, it wasn't accredited. They didn't have a proficiency testing program. Security for the building was remarkably lax. It would look like maybe not even a good choice to accept the position. We had to convince the staff of the value of all these things, and that was a tall order. So, for example, in reaccreditation, when we, starting from no sections accredited to get them all accredited, we brought in a mock accreditation team just so everyone could get the feel of what this was going to look like and what, how they were going to be challenged and whether we had any chance of passing it. And the mock team was very complimentary, and I think gave everyone the confidence that we were on the right track, that laboratory management and quality assurance wasn't leading them down a path where we would embarrass ourselves. So I like the comments that I've heard. Reach out to the lab directors. There's so many resources. ASCLD has resources for assisting laboratories. ANSI probably does. I'm not as familiar with their willingness to outreach, but they came and trained us as assessors in our laboratory in Harris County. In Harris County, it was actually a question of growth. The laboratory was functioning very well. It was accredited. it just wanted to expand. I mean, greatly expand. We were overwhelmed in DNA. We had just gotten approval to quadruple our staff. That was hugely challenging. We had more people being trained than we had trainers. How can you do casework when you have 40 people coming in or 30 new people coming in to a staff of 11 that are supposed to train and conduct casework? I don't think I can describe the answer to you, except that we did it very carefully. We took our time when time was needed. We made no apologies that our turnaround times weren't where they ought to be. But we needed to do things properly in order to ensure that we had a stable system going forward, never panicking, accepting the challenges and being transparent with the community. When it's easy to be forgiven for things, it's much more difficult when you claim that you didn't see it coming or you didn't really understand what was going on. This laboratory already has, your laboratory, DFS, already has the success of 2 of the difficult sections. They've proven that they can pull this off. I don't have any question that they can do it for the sections that they're trying to reestablish. But I think engaging with the community, as others have said, even having a mock, so that the staff is clear that they are worthy of accreditation, and getting the buy-in from them. I like engaging the staff in these things, actually asking them what they think about how the standards read, instead of having it be completely the purview of the quality team and the management team. Let them arrange it. Let them look at the standards and ask, how do you think we're qualifying for this? Again, these things take time. They take tension away from casework, but they go to developing a buy-in of a comprehensive quality program, which you just can't beat.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for that. And I love this idea of the mocks. We will raise that with DFS as well. What do you think the best run labs have in common that you've seen? I know we talked a little bit about the management perspective and people buy-in, but what are we seeing that's consistent for those that are really held up as the best labs?
The best labs have staff that are not at odds with management. That is elusive. It's hard to describe how to make that happen. But if you engage them so that they have a personal stake in the laboratory, then you'll find that they're willing to work with management instead of opposing it. Those are the best labs. Budgets vary, talent varies, staff size varies, the ability to meet the needs of the community vary. But if the lab is working together, then you beat one of the major challenges, which is dysfunction within the group itself. It's a little bit hard to describe how to do it. I think you just have to walk around, be present, be a part of the laboratory yourself, so that when people see you, they actually want to ask you questions. What are we doing about this? Be willing to engage your staff and face them directly with the toughest questions they want to answer. Let them know that you're human too, that sometimes you don't know what the answer to a particular question is. You don't have to constantly be at the top of every question. I think you got to look for talent within your lab, nurture it, give people an opportunity to excel, and then they will.
I'd like to add just to that, I also think it's important that your staff knows that, as from the management perspective, that you have their back and that you are there to support them. And it doesn't mean that you're always going to agree with them, but at least leave the lines of communication open to discuss issues, and as things come up, and at least be willing to listen, but advocate for them as well, I think is very important. And I feel that if your staff trusts you as a leader, then it makes the world a difference as far as how the lab functions. You may not have the resources, you may not have those things in place, but if they know you're going to go to bat for them, because they can ask for something and you're not just going to be like, no, sorry, we can't do it. Instead, okay, let's figure out how we can get this done. How can we ask for this? What can we do? Okay, if we don't get it, how's a way that we can still work through this? And that you're willing to collaborate and work with them to get things done, but you always have their back. I think is one of the most important things as far as the lab functioning well.
Mhm. Thank you for that. Thank you both. So Dr. Ropero-Miller, you've been published on a wide range of topics, many regarding forensic toxicology and justice, and you're also a laboratory inspector for the American Board of Forensic Toxicology. Can you talk a little bit about what you look for when conducting a laboratory inspection and how this experience will inform your efforts on the SAB?
Sure. So when doing a laboratory inspection, and I will say that most of my laboratory inspections have been for Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, so more post-mortem types of laboratories, but follow the same thing. And now ABFT is under the ANSI process too. So when I go into a laboratory, you get your checklist that the laboratory has filled out. They've already done their self-assessment. And so part of your homework going into that inspection is to understand what they've written. But one of the first things I like to do when, we're getting started and getting familiar with the lab, because we normally get some type of, they show us around the lab and give us a tour and point to, locations that we need to be aware of. But I like to follow up with the individuals in the laboratory on any part of the checklist that was provided that was a little unclear or didn't make sense or anything like that. And then really, I tend to use my first day just doing observations of those that are working in the laboratory. I really think it's important. Many laboratories will kind of put the inspectors in a place that you're only dealing with the quality team, the quality assurance team, or management. But I think it's important to be present and speak to those that are working in the laboratory too, because in my mind, and when I've talked to people, the inspection is a process that the laboratory is usually trying to do it not only for the continuous improvement and making sure that those that are looking at their laboratory from an external perspective, but it is a time for them to be able to speak to some of the things that would help them do their accreditation process better. And sometimes that's not something that management will bring up or even the quality assurance team, but you'll hear it from those that are in the laboratory doing their protocols for the day. And then, the other thing with the observation is the SOPs say one thing, but is that how it's being done? So that observation piece. And then the second day or third day, depending on how time works, the big part of the testing is really looking at the data and making sure that the process was followed, all the data is there, that it was reviewed and signed off on, and everything is in order, because a lot of times you don't find out about the back end of the documentation until a case is going to court. And if you're not following that process on a daily, just like that is your SOP and the way you work. If you're not doing it on a daily basis, then it's gonna bite you sooner or later when that course is, that case is taken to court. So I think that that's kind of my way of being a part of the inspection. And then, just working with the inspection team. I stay doing inspections just because it gives me the ability to work with people from other laboratories, because I continue to learn, and then I can pass that on to others when I'm put in a conversation where that may not have been my experience, but I've heard from Nicole or Laura or Roger or Claudine. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. That's great to hear. And in terms of your research, how do you think that the substantive skill set, knowledge, expertise you have in your research will help enable you to be an effective member of SAB.
Okay. So I'll just profess that I've been doing research for 20 years now. The first 10 years, I was still doing research in the laboratory and stuff like that. But really, after my first 5 years, I've moved to doing things that have to do with, all the things that I talked about, laboratory improvement, technology adoption and just continuous improvement of the laboratory. So my research is a little bit different in that a lot of the things I'm doing are evaluations. So I'm working with the practitioners to understand, what it took to implement a particular technology. I'm doing the primary and secondary research to gather the information to, assess it, collate it, put it together. So I've done both laboratory research, and now I would say half of my career has really been about process evaluations and technology evaluations, and even, quite honestly, policy research is very important for forensic sciences because, everything we do is tied into a policy, even within the laboratory or all the way up. And so a lot of times unintended consequences or not communicating or the unknown is what gets us in trouble. And quite honestly, you can go to the literature and you can't find things in the literature that have been put in place in black and white. And so those are always, I guess, my pet projects that I look for to see what's a gap in what's out there in the literature and see if I can come up with some kind of research to do it and then, put it in peer-reviewed publication so it's there for people to access.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I just have a final question for you all as we, again, look to the future. And, I have a lot of hope and confidence that we are heading in the right direction, recognizing that where we have been as a lab is not where we need to be, and where we have been with the relationship with SAB is not where we need it to be. And I think that this is a real opportunity to rely on your substantive knowledge, your managerial knowledge, and your willingness to be a true partner, because that's really what this is all about. We all have the same goal in making sure that we have an excellent, fully accredited, well-run, effective forensic lab. And I know that that is important to Dr. Diaz, who runs the lab. It's important to the executive and everybody who works in this space, and certainly the public. As we move forward and kind of rebuilding the SAB and this partnership, assuming you all move forward and are confirmed, do you have any thoughts on the other types of experiences we should be looking for the remaining 4 positions for SAB members to ensure that we have a full complement of skill sets to help move the lab forward?
Let me start. You want to build a firearms team and you want to accredit it. Nobody on here has firearms experience. And that is something the SAB could help with. It's a subjective, like latent prints. It's not a quantitative science yet. It's getting there. But this is something you look at and you make judgments about, and you really need to understand the field's view of how to support a subjective match. And, it made me nervous to manage those sections because I personally don't know how to do that. So that's my suggestion, is that you find a firearms examiner, you've got a latent print examiner par excellence. And I don't know what other laboratory sections the DFS wants. So maybe you could speak to that and then seek SAB membership from those disciplines as well.
Mhm. Thank you. It's a great point.
One other, I guess, individual that I would think of, while everyone here definitely participates in quality assurance, if you could have somebody who has, and I'm sorry, I don't know everybody's CV, so I kind of know, but someone who has really been a quality assurance manager that has had to deal with the assurance program in daily operations, and someone who obviously has gone through accreditations like we have, because it is a little bit different than going through that whole process as a director of a laboratory versus the quality assurance manager. So I would say that that would be another type of individual that would be nice to be on this advisory board.
Thank you.
I would add to what's already been suggested. You have myself and Laura, who have experience running statewide lab systems with geographic locations, which is very different than Claudine, who runs a county lab that serves, maybe considering somebody with forensic management of a city lab, city size lab that deals more with some of the components of, working with councils. There's similarities and there's, analogous in what we're doing, but there's nuances to it that are just a little different when you're working at, whether it be, the municipal level, the state level, the national level. So that would just be one thought, is to consider somebody who is running a crime laboratory, a crime lab director at a city, larger. I know there's like major city chief groups and things like that that might be good resources to reach out to get some of those crime lab directors.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on this?
So are you held to just scientists? Because to me, if you've got an advisory board, you really need to hear from the customers that are using the laboratory. I mean, I wouldn't heavily load it with attorneys, but if you've got an attorney out there that has a good relationship with the judicial system in the area, that can, because they need to hear the debate and why the decisions are made and be a part of it, not just hear it, but to participate in it. Because there are times that labs say, yeah, we can do that, but we will not do that. And sometimes that is the wrong answer. Sometimes they really need to do it. They just don't want to do it. And so hearing the other perspectives on why something needs to get done, here's why we're asking you for this analysis. Here's, what happens in court and why, this, you're not seeing what the jury is coming back, and critiquing what we did. So if you've got the opportunity to supply a prosecutor, defense, an academic that can help review, we're getting bashed over the head that firearms testing is too subjective. Somebody that can help us evaluate and find, hey, we're going to change, to the 3D scopes. What does that bring to the table? What does that not bring to the table? That type of perspective. So I would not heavily load it with that, but if you've got the opportunity, I'd bring in some outside voices.
Thank you so much. That's a helpful perspective. And right now, the way that it's structured is limited to just scientists, because the intention was to be focused on that perspective. But I think you raise a really important point that we need to be working collaboratively within the entire ecosystem. And perhaps this is the body that, we can consider expansion or other avenues to make sure that those inputs are more formally solicited, so we can all be functioning. So thank you for raising that. That's helpful. All right. Well, I want to thank you all so much for your time and for pursuing careers in this very important space. We really appreciate it and your willingness to serve, and thank you for coming together today to do this nomination confirmation hearing in one swoop together. We appreciate that, and we look forward to continuing to work together, and we will follow up with you all around next steps. But thank you very much again. There being no further business before the committee. The time is now 12:42 p.m. and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.